Wasn't victory. It was an opening. Rin didn't act immediately. That was the biggest difference between her now and the person she used to be. Before, she reacted from pain. Now she moved from patience. She watched as Kale continued to perform his version of heartbreak online, posting cryptic messages about betrayal and loyalty. People praised his strength. They called him brave. Each post built him higher on a platform of lies. One evening, her friend snapped, "Are you really going to let him keep playing the victim?" Rin replied calmly, "No. I'm going to let him finish building the stage first." Her friend stared at her. "That sounds dangerous." Rin nodded. "It is. But so was loving him." Kale felt the shift before he saw it. He called her from a blocked number late one night. "Why are people asking questions?" he demanded without greeting. Rin leaned back against her chair. "People always ask questions," she said. "You taught me that." There was a pause. "Did you show someone our chats?" he asked. "Which version?" she replied. His breathing changed on the line. "You're trying to ruin me," he said. Rin's voice stayed steady. "No. I'm trying to survive you." For the first time since she met him, he had nothing sharp to throw back. He hung up without another word. For the first time, Rin felt like she could breathe without watching her back. The walls she had built around her heart were not complete. They never would be. But at least she could move freely in her own space. She spent evenings walking the city streets alone, noticing things she hadn't seen in months. The way streetlights reflected off wet pavement, the faint hum of late-night traffic, the laughter of strangers that didn't belong to anyone she loved or feared. Kale's absence hung in the air like a shadow she couldn't touch, but it no longer controlled her steps. She even laughed at a joke her friend told over coffee. Small, free laugh. It felt alien, unfamiliar, and intoxicating. For the first time, she realized survival did not mean silence. It meant living in spite of everything. But Kale did not vanish. He became a ghost in the periphery, texting occasionally from numbers she didn't recognize, showing up in places she had mentioned in passing, always distant enough not to be caught but close enough to unsettle her. "You think you can escape me?" one text read. Rin ignored it. Another followed. "You don't understand what you've done to me." Ignoring it felt like defiance. And it felt like a small victory. Her friends noticed the change in her posture, the way she no longer flinched at the sound of a notification. "He's trying," one friend said, voice low. "Trying what?" Rin asked. "To pull you back into that storm," they said. And she nodded. She had learned storms were easier to survive when you watched them from the outside. The moment of confrontation arrived unexpectedly. Rin saw Kale at a mutual friend's gathering, smiling and charming, performing the version of himself everyone else wanted to see. His eyes found hers across the room, sharp and calculating. She didn't flinch. He approached slowly, like a predator circling prey that no longer feared him. "You look different," he said, voice low. "Stronger," she replied evenly. "You're hiding," he whispered. "No," she said. "I'm seeing clearly." He studied her face, searching for weakness. There was none. For the first time, the control he relied on was gone. The silence between them was thick, dangerous, electric. And yet she didn't run. She didn't beg. She simply let him see the truth. She was no longer his. Kale's charm fractured that night. He tried to smile, tried to joke, tried to slide back into the illusion that they once shared. "We could fix this," he whispered, voice low, almost pleading. Rin shook her head. "We could have," she said. "But you never wanted to fix it. You wanted to control it." He stopped in his tracks, like her words had struck a nerve he hadn't expected to feel. Around them, friends laughed, unaware of the tension twisting the air. Rin felt the old fear rise for a moment, a reflex of months trapped under his influence. Then she let it pass. Fear no longer dictated her movements. She moved closer to a friend, smiling lightly, and left him standing there with nothing to say. For the first time he was invisible to her, not because he had changed but because she finally had. The fallout began quietly. Mutual friends, long caught in Kale's web of charm, started noticing inconsistencies in his stories. Screenshots Rin had kept for herself became evidence when subtle conversations revealed the truth. He tried to explain, to justify, to rewrite, but every lie slipped through like water between fingers. At gatherings, whispers trailed him, questions lingered in the air, and he could no longer perform the flawless narrative he had built. Rin watched from a distance, detached yet aware, as the very platform he had used to manipulate perception crumbled beneath him. It was not immediate satisfaction she felt. It was the strange, sharp clarity of seeing the illusion fall apart while standing firmly outside it. Kale confronted Rin weeks later at a cafe neither had visited together before. He leaned against the table, face tight with unspent frustration. "You've done this," he said simply, as if the entire world's judgment was her doing. "I didn't do anything," Rin replied calmly, eyes meeting his. "You destroyed me," he said, voice cracking. "You exposed me." He paused, measured. "I exposed the truth," she said. "Truth isn't destruction. Lies are." He flinched as if struck, but quickly masked it with anger. "You think you're free," he spat. "I am," she said. And unlike before, she did not hesitate, she did not falter. She left the cafe without another word, feeling the weight of months lift slightly with every step. For once, escape felt like a real choice. Kale's unraveling accelerated in ways Rin could only observe from the edges. He began posting cryptic messages online. Half-truths, half-lies, full of tension that screamed for attention. Friends who once defended him hesitated, unsure what to believe. Screenshots from Rin's collection surfaced anonymously in forums, proving his manipulations without naming her. Kale raged quietly in private, frustrated at a world that suddenly doubted him. Rin didn't celebrate. She watched, silently noting how someone who once made her life unbearable could now struggle with the weight of their own actions. There was no joy in vengeance, just the stark, cold satisfaction of clarity and survival. Rin began rebuilding her life cautiously. She picked up old hobbies she had abandoned, returned to places she once loved, and let conversations flow without filtering every word through the lens of fear. One evening, she ran into an old friend who noticed the difference immediately. "You seem lighter," they said. "I am," Rin replied. "But it's not freedom yet. It's practice." She smiled, realizing that living after control wasn't a sudden transformation. It was a series of small steps, each one requiring courage she hadn't known she possessed before. The lessons from Kale's manipulation lingered, sharp and precise, teaching her to trust her instincts while guarding her heart carefully. Kale meanwhile became erratic. Social media painted him as charismatic still, but small cracks appeared for anyone willing to look. He sent Rin long, desperate emails filled with blame, apology, and threats, all in the same message. One read, "I can't live like this without you. Come back or I'll make sure everyone knows the real you." Rin stared at it for a long time, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The old Rin might have replied, might have argued, might have begged. The new Rin deleted it immediately. The message became nothing more than a reminder of who she had been, and who she refused to be again. She knew control wasn't won with words. It was won with detachment. Kale tried to corner Rin at a mutual friend's art show, but she refused to give him the stage he sought. He approached her, smiling as if charm could undo months of tension. "You're avoiding me," he said softly. "I'm not avoiding anyone," Rin replied, her voice steady. "You're lying," he whispered. She shook her head. "I'm speaking the truth for once. And the truth is, I don't fear you anymore." His smile faltered, the mask slipping. Around them, people whispered, curious at the sudden sharp tension in the air. Rin realized the power had shifted quietly, imperceptibly, like water seeping under a dam. Kale could no longer control the narrative with his presence alone. The next week, screenshots and proof of Kale's lies spread online, anonymously shared by someone meticulous enough to expose the full scope without revealing Rin's identity. Mutual friends confronted him, asking why his version of events never matched reality. Cale fumed, attempted explanations, and denied everything, but every statement only deepened suspicion. He had built his persona carefully, yet every manipulation, every whispered lie, had become visible to the public eye. Rin watched quietly from a distance, heart pounding not with triumph, but with disbelief. The man who once dictated every corner of her life was now fumbling in public, forced to navigate chaos he had created himself. Despite the exposure, Cale refused to disappear. He called her at odd hours, sent messages dripping with veiled threats and remorse, and tried to pull her back into arguments she had long refused to engage in. "You think this ends here?" he asked one night, voice low and sharp. "No," Rin replied calmly. "It ended the day I stopped being afraid." Silence followed, heavy on the line. For the first time, he understood that the fear he had thrived on was gone. That evening, Rin felt a strange kind of liberation, a quiet power that came from realizing she no longer had to justify herself. She had survived, yes, but more importantly, she had witnessed the unraveling without becoming entangled again. Cale's obsession transformed into a quiet stalking. He appeared at places she frequented without warning, never confrontational, always just enough to unsettle her. A cafe where she liked to read, a park she jogged through, even her favorite bookstore. He was there, silent, watching. Rin learned to navigate her life with caution, yet she refused to show fear. One afternoon, he appeared while she was sketching in the park. He leaned on a tree nearby, arms crossed. "You're sketching again," he said, calm as if he belonged there. "I always did," Rin replied without looking up. "You're pretending nothing happened," he whispered. "I'm pretending nothing can control me anymore," she said. He smiled then, but it was not gentle. It was a smile that acknowledged a challenge he could not yet conquer. The tension between them became public in subtle ways. Mutual friends noticed the strained glances, the short replies, the way Rin's body stiffened whenever he was near. Cale tried to reclaim attention through charm, humor, and selective compliments, but the charm no longer landed. He asked questions meant to provoke guilt. "You don't miss what we had?" he asked once at a party. Rin shook her head. "I don't miss fear disguised as love," she said. He paused, the words striking harder than she intended. His usual confidence faltered, replaced by an unsteady intensity. Around them, people whispered, sensing that the quiet power had shifted. Cale had ruled her life for months, but now he ruled only himself, and that throne was crumbling. Rin began documenting everything meticulously, every interaction, every call, every silent encounter. She wrote it all in a leather-bound notebook, not for revenge, not for proof, but for clarity. Each entry became a reminder of how manipulation had worked, how control had felt invisible, and how she had fought her way out. Cale occasionally caught glimpses of her journal, unaware she had hidden it from his view. One night he asked, "Why do you write so much?" "To remember who I am," she replied. He stared, confused. "I thought you forgot yourself easily," he said. Rin closed the journal softly, locking it in her drawer. "Not anymore," she said. And in that moment, the distance between them felt absolute. Cale's attempts to control her shifted into indirect attacks. He spread subtle rumors, painted her as the manipulator, and carefully planted doubts in their mutual circles. Yet every move backfired. People who once followed him blindly began to question the narrative. Rin stayed silent publicly, refusing to defend herself immediately. Every post, every comment, every whispered lie only reflected his own obsession. One evening a mutual friend whispered, "He's unraveling faster than you think." Rin nodded quietly, feeling a strange satisfaction mixed with unease. The man who had once dominated her life was now struggling under the weight of the life he had created, a storm he had summoned himself. Rin's personal life started to flourish in subtle ways she hadn't realized she missed. She started attending art classes again, reconnecting with friends, laughing freely without fearing judgment. The freedom wasn't loud, it was quiet, patient, healing. One evening, she met a kind stranger at a gallery, and they spoke for hours about nothing and everything. She noticed that her heart could beat without tension, that her voice could sound soft without trembling. And yet, the shadow of Cale remained, a faint pulse of unease in the back of her mind. It reminded her that liberation wasn't permanent until the past had fully accepted its consequences. She was learning to live between the freedom she earned and the vigilance she could never discard. Cale escalated again, this time attempting public confrontation. At a mutual friend's small gathering, he approached her, smiling in a way that demanded attention. "You look happy," he said quietly. "You look untouchable." Rin met his gaze calmly. "I am," she said. Around them, others sensed the tension but didn't understand its depth. Cale's hands twitched as he reached to speak further, but no words came. He realized she was no longer reacting, no longer trembling at his presence. The audience of friends and strangers watched a man unravel in real time, struggling against the very person he had tried to dominate. In that moment, Rin felt a pulse of quiet power. Not cruelty, not triumph, just the recognition that she had survived him fully intact. Cale's desperation became obvious in ways that unsettled even those who had supported him. He started showing up in places he knew Rin would be, not to speak, but to observe. Cafes, bookstores, even quiet streets he remembered her walking. He appeared like a shadow, silent and watchful. Rin noticed him always, but she refused to react. She walked past him calmly, smiled at strangers, laughed at jokes. His presence, which once dictated her every movement, became meaningless. One evening he called her, voice low and taut with frustration. "You're impossible to break," he said. Rin didn't reply. "I'm done," she finally said after a pause. Silence hung on the line, thick, dangerous. For once, he had nothing to throw at her. Nothing. The rumors and social pressure reached their peak after Cale's online manipulations were exposed publicly. Screenshots, messages, and timelines were pieced together and shared anonymously in forums, leaving him scrambling for explanations that no longer held. Mutual friends confronted him, citing inconsistencies and impossible coincidences. Cale attempted excuses, apologies, denials, and charm, but every response only deepened suspicion. Rin watched quietly from the sidelines, aware of every faltering step, every crack forming in the persona he had carefully built. There was no joy in seeing him falter, only the sober understanding that the man who had haunted her life for months was now facing the chaos he had created alone. Rin finally felt the first real sense of safety months after leaving him. The freedom was subtle but undeniable. She could sleep without checking her phone constantly, go for a walk without scanning the streets for his figure, meet friends without fearing that every conversation would reach him first. She still carried the scars of control, the memory of fear that had once dictated her thoughts and actions, but each day they became lighter. In quiet moments, she smiled at herself in the mirror, tracing the lines of someone who had endured and survived. And while Cale remained a shadow in the background of her life, it was no longer a looming presence. For the first time, he was distant enough for her to breathe fully, to live fully, to reclaim the parts of herself he had tried to erase. Cale's attempts to regain control became more erratic. He sent long, rambling messages, half apologies, half threats, each one revealing the depth of his obsession. "You think you're safe." One read, "You can't escape me." Rin read them calmly and deleted each one. She no longer responded to his attempts at provocation, no longer let fear dictate her actions. Her friends noticed the change. "You look stronger every day," one said, sipping coffee. "Stronger," Rin repeated to herself quietly. And she was. The months of fear, manipulation, and control had honed her instincts, sharpened her clarity, and made her resilience undeniable. She was no longer reacting to him. She was moving forward intentionally on her own terms. One evening, Cale appeared outside a small cafe where Rin was meeting a friend. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her. His eyes were sharp, searching for a crack, a flicker of vulnerability. "You look different," he said when she noticed him. I am different, she replied evenly. He stepped closer. You can't leave this unfinished, he whispered. I'm done, she said, standing slowly. She refused to flinch. Around them, people glanced, curious but unaware of the storm between them. Kale's usual confidence faltered under the weight of her calm, measured presence. For the first time, she realized that survival wasn't about escaping him. It was about standing firmly while he tried, and failed to regain control. Kale's social facade began to crumble completely after more proof of his lies surfaced online. Anonymous posts laid bare manipulations, messages and contradictions, leaving him scrambling for credibility. Friends who once believed him questioned everything. Conversations turned to accusations, and trust evaporated. Rin watched quietly, detached yet attentive, aware of every falter. There was no joy in witnessing his fall, only clarity, the recognition that truth, when patient and persistent, eventually surfaces. Kale, who had once dictated her every thought and reaction, now faced the consequences of a reality he could no longer shape or control. And Rin felt the quiet power of detachment, the kind that could not be undone. Kale, desperate and exposed, became unrecognizable. His charm had crumbled entirely. The calm aggression had been replaced by frantic messages, angry voicemails, and public confrontations that left friends whispering in disbelief. Everywhere he turned, the evidence of his manipulations trailed him like a shadow. People stopped laughing at his jokes. People stopped defending him. Rin watched from a distance, her chest heavy, knowing that months of psychological torment had finally come full circle. He called her one last time, voice trembling. You think you've won, he demanded. She didn't flinch. I survived, she said. And you failed. That night, Kale drove recklessly, fists tight on the wheel, mind racing with obsession and ruin. Rin, unaware, went about her evening, safe, calm, finally free. Minutes later, news flashed across her phone. A car crash on the highway. Her stomach dropped. Friends called in panic. It was him. Kale had pushed himself to the edge, unable to bear the loss of control, unable to survive exposure. The man who had tormented her, who had rewritten reality for months, who had haunted her life and thoughts, was gone. Suddenly, irrevocably. Rin felt a cold emptiness rather than relief. Survival had cost him everything, and in that moment the terrifying truth hit her. Love had never existed in that relationship. Only obsession, manipulation, and destruction. And now, in the final cruel twist, she realized she would never see closure, only the haunting echo of what almost destroyed her.